reaction video to today's game. So the Florida State whining Seminoles got embarrassed again by a team from the state of Georgia. So in a way, it was more embarrassing, and in a way, it was less embarrassing than last time. So it was less embarrassing because at least they played close this time and didn't get beat by 60 points like last time. But it was more embarrassing in the way that it was at Georgia Tech and not Georgia, who was a much worse team than Georgia that beat them. And I actually predicted Florida State to lose this game. Uh, and if you don't believe me, you can go back and watch either my Georgia Tech or my Florida State prediction videos and see. And I got some mean comments for that. I got a comment saying that there's no chance that Georgia Tech could beat Florida State, and that who wrote the comment is laughing at my prediction, but they were wrong. And I got a comment calling me retarded for my prediction video that I made on Florida State, but they were wrong. And I got a comment calling me a mean name that I won't even say out loud on here, but they look pretty stupid now calling me that. So Florida State looked bad today in many different ways. So their defense is clearly not as good as it was last year. Last year they had a really good defense that was a really high pressure defense. But today it was nothing like that. They really struggled to get pressure on Georgia Tech's quarterback Haynes King, and Florida State was supposed to have a really good offensive line this year, and I thought they would. But today, Georgia Tech dominated their offensive line, and Georgia Tech's defensive line was terrible last year. They ranked last in the ACC at stopping the run, and they were terrible at pass rush, and they were one of the worst defensive lines in the country last year. But they pushed around Florida State's offensive line the whole game, really, except for that first possession for Florida State offensively. And Georgia Tech actually had a better pass rush than Florida State did. I thought that Georgia Tech was going to struggle in the front seven again, but maybe they're a lot better, or maybe Florida State is just not any good. But offensively, overall, Florida State looked terrible. So I do like the running back that they brought in from Alabama, Roydell Williams. He is a good running back, but looks like he's their best offensive player this year, and he can't carry their offense by himself. He's not the kind of running back like Derrick Henry or Ollie Gordon or Quinshon Judkins that can carry it all by themselves. He needs a good running back number two to help him out. And looks like I was right about the wide receiver situation. I said in my video that I didn't think Florida State had a very good receiver unit. I think that they were going to really struggle at losing their top two wide receivers, Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, who both went to the NFL. And their receivers today looked awful. They didn't have any receivers that looked impressive at all to me. And they struggled to run the football other than that first possession, and that was a disappointment for Florida State's team to me, because I actually thought they were going to be a good running team. And Georgia Tech, I wasn't surprised that they have a good offensive line. They had one of the best offensive lines in the ACC last season. But what was surprising is that Florida State was supposed to have a great defensive line, maybe the best defensive line in the ACC and one of the best defensive lines in the country this season. So you would have thought that they could have matched up well with the Georgia Tech offensive line, but Georgia Tech's offensive line pushed around that Florida State defensive line and dominated them. So it looks like Florida State is actually not back. It looks like last year was just a one-time thing. So they threw a fit last year because they weren't good enough to make the top four playoff. But now they'll have to pout about missing out on the 12-team playoff because they're not even going to be good enough this year to get in it. So they're going to lose 3 or 4 games, no doubt, this year. And Florida State this time won't even get embarrassed in a New Year's Six bowl game because now the playoff games are taking up all of the New Year's Six bowl games. And don't give me in the comments because Florida State lost to Georgia Tech that Georgia Tech is an elite dominant football program because you know as well as I do that that's not true. Georgia Tech, I think, may be a pretty good team. I think they're a decent team, but I think probably with the schedule that they have, they're a 6 or 7 win team this year. And DJ Ukulele, it looks like I was right about him. Looks like he's nowhere near what Jordan Travis was for Florida State. A big downgrade for them at the quarterback position. He looked like he did these past 3 seasons when he's been a starting quarterback, not any good. And also don't give me in the comments, well, Alabama lost to Texas early in the season last year, and they ended up making the college football playoff because they got better. Texas was a really good team last year. They're not Georgia Tech. And even though Texas didn't have a really good year for a long time until last season. It was known that uh, before that Texas had the type of athletes to compete with Alabama, and Georgia Tech does not have those types of athletes that it should be able to compete with teams like that. But of course, Florida State is nowhere near Alabama. And Florida State can pout about missing the playoffs again this time, but they would just get embarrassed again if they got in because uh, this team that we saw play today, how would they beat Georgia or Ohio State or Oregon or Ole Miss or Texas or even Alabama, teams that have a decent chance to win the national championship this year, they get destroyed by teams like them because those are all teams that would beat Georgia Tech easily. And Florida State's recruiting was, I know, doing really bad for the 2025 class, but losing to a team like Georgia Tech is really not going to help them. So that will be it with this video. And thanks for watching. And please subscribe. And I'll be back soon. And if you're a Florida State fan, don't worry because there's always next year, even though your season is over when it's just started.